Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are at a crossroads. You may remember from the last episode that we went and grabbed some Drecos. We're going to take these Drecos, and we're going to turn them into glossy Drecos. And then we're going to shear the scales right off of them and get some beautiful plastic. Then I also realized, well, you know what? Slicksters can give us plastic. When we take that Slickster and we're given some beautiful crude oil, we then take that beautiful crude oil, turn it into petroleum, and then we put that petroleum in a polymer press, and we get plastic that way. And not only that, we would then have more crude oil and petroleum to do whatever we want with. So there's the crossroads. Do we go with the Drecos and glossy Drecos and gather up reed fiber and plastic? Or do we go with the almighty Slickster, who can eat all of our carbon dioxide, give us some oil, some petroleum, and then some plastic that way? And the petroleum we can even feed to more petroleum generators to create more power, which creates more polluted water. You see where this is going. That's why I've decided this is not a decision at all. We're just going to do both. By the way, hidden echoes are back. That's right. Keep your eyes open for a hidden echo in every single video, and be the first to comment and link a timestamp for magical internet points. And people all over the world will see how awesome you are. So I've started some of the blueprints on what's going to be our master Dreco ranch. Starts over here with some regular standard Drecos eating some mealwood. We're also going to shear them, put a little bit of hydrogen in the top of this ranch to make sure that those reed fibers keep growing. And then we're going to take all the Drecos that they produce and throw them in this starvation ranch, where we're also going to shear them. And this whole section is going to be filled with hydrogen, which means we're going to need to put a liquid lock and a bunch of automation. It's going to be a whole thing, but once it's done, it's going to be sort of set it and forget it. There's a lot of little things that we're going to have to do to make sure the heat doesn't become a problem and that sort of thing, but for now, it'll be okay. We're also going to be retrofitting this rocket to send it back to Neutralina. The first thing I wanted to try is putting the mess tables down here and see if this will at least give us a mess hall. I think it will. We can put some storage bins up here and it'll be just fine. The disadvantage is the storage bin with the oxalate in it actually helps eat some of that carbon dioxide, because the oxygen overwrites the carbon dioxide. And then I had the epiphany, why not just put the mess table down here and one up here? Every time they have to go to the bathroom, they'd have to walk through this mess hall, and we could get the bonus that way. Except, because the latrine's in here, there's conflicting buildings, so you just get miscellaneous room. Let's try Plan C. And here's Plan C. Not only do we get a barracks, we also get a mess hall for a total of +4 morale. And we did it by putting the gas pump and the manual generator, which are both considered industrial machines, in their own room. We have a little bit more radiation protection this time, and we're utilizing the ladder beds to save 2 more tiles for a floor. It may not be the prettiest, but it is a marketable improvement. Now it's time to head over to Neutralina. Now we know these 2 Slicksters have yet to lay an egg because, well, we just don't see any. But when we zoom out, this whole area must be an oil biome, which means there'll be more Slicksters and a better chance for an egg. Now we've loaded up Rover 41 with 14,500 calories worth of swamp chard heart. That should give us plenty of cycles to wait around or go find that egg. So we're going to grab the 2 Johns once again, not so much as the fact that they have experience and are skill scrubbed, but mostly because I just enjoy saying the 2 Johns. But before we leave, we need to drop off the Drecos. Now this is not really working yet, so we're just going to disable this building, and that way there's no chance that they'll start grooming them and they would go hungry before we get this thing set. But we set our critter drop off to Drecos and Drecklets, and then scoop them all up from the rover. And with the Drecos transplanted over here, we are ready to go with the rover for our second mission to Neutralina. With our destination set and our 2 Johns loaded, it's time to go. Interestingly enough, it looks like I need to reassign the duplicants to these ladder beds. I caught the 2 Johns sleeping on the floor. That's not how we want to do. We've shipped some mealwood over from Frostine. You may remember that Drecos, they run hot. In fact, it's significantly more heat than what the mealwood likes, so you normally need some cooling in here. So until we do get our cooling loop going, we're going to need to put one of our few wart seeds in here. It'll help keep the mealwoods cold enough, ensuring that these Drecos have plenty to eat. Now, the number of mealwood is pretty specific. When you look up a Dreco in the database, you can see that each Dreco will eat 0.8 units of a mealwood. In other words, 0.8 of a plant per cycle. Well, we're going to be wanting to run 8 Drecos, so that's 6.4 plants per cycle. hence the reason we have 7 mealwoods growing. Now the radiation is a minor issue. You can see that our second layer of blocks here does stop most of it from here, but while the dupes are traveling from one side of the stable to the other, they're going to get a small dose. It's not going to be too bad, and they're only going to be there briefly, so I'm not too worried about it. And one of the most convenient things about the Wheezewort inside the Draco Ranch is you have to feed them phosphorite. Well, it just so happens that's exactly what the Dracos excrete. So we have ourselves a sort of self-licking ice cream cone here. That's a pretty short flight from Eugenia. I'm actually impressed that they're already here. Since we have access to this already, I think we're just going to continue to dig straight down. This should be good there, and then we'll scope out everything once we're here. We can start, I guess, by digging straight over. At least to here for a start. We're going to have to give our 2 Johns some additional digging, because remember, Abyssalite takes super hard digging, and right now they only have hard digging. Not a big deal, especially considering it looks like the morale in the rocket has actually given them some space on what they can learn. Back on our home planetoid, we're sort of setting up shop. We're adding a liquid lock here because we're going to be filling this entire room with nothing but hydrogen. This will allow all the Dracos that get dropped off here to be skinned many, many times before they run out of calories. This is going to allow us to get a lot of plastic and a lot of reed fiber. We are going to end up putting some automation on this incubator, but we're going to be running this incubator powered, and that way we can produce as many Dracos as possible. But it's important to note, the only Dracos that are going to be incubated is going to be standard Dracos. All the glossy Dracos are still going to get dropped off. In fact, the Dracos are going to be more likely to lay glossy Draclet eggs because they're eating nothing but mealwood. And so any chance that we get a standard Draco egg, we're definitely going to make sure that we incubate it powered so it can be lullabied to keep this stable full. I wasted a cycle or 2 of digging because I had left this block in place so the duplicants couldn't even get over here. And for my failure, it's cost us about 7,000 calories of swamp chard hearts. Luckily, it does look like there's some meal lice here. That could definitely extend our trip. So we'll go ahead and select meal lice on this unpowered refrigerator so they know to pick all of it up too. Oh, while we're here, we definitely want to grab some of this diamond. Look at it all. It's so beautiful. Our next step in this process is to be able to get all the Dracos in here and keep them in here. And that way, they're more likely to be closer to this grooming station. Now, it's not a big deal, but it also allows us to use a fewer amount of auto sweepers to automate this ranch. So what we do is we drop just a little bit of water right here, and then we're going to deconstruct this tile. And when that tile's deconstructed, that little bit of water drops right down here. Now we can build the tile back, and we have a small little liquid lock right here. And the great thing is, Dracos don't like to go through water. So they're actually going to avoid going through this spot, which is exactly what we want. Now, there are some in our community who would call this exploitive in nature. Well, I don't. I call it knowing our critters' tendencies and then building and designing around them. With the Dracos in place and them comfortable inside their ranch, we can now enable this grooming station. And we're getting pretty close. I figured another food contingency could be we just plant a bunch of mealwoods down here. We have access to dirt. We have some mealwood seeds. So this is sort of a perfect situation. Now we don't have so many mealwood seeds, so we have to dig them up where we can. And we're also going to dig in through some of these beautiful buried objects with the hopes that one of them is eventually going to be a hatch. If you remember, we need the sage hatches for our ultimate plan. I also figured while we're here, it'd probably be good if we went and grabbed all these. I mean, that's a good amount of steel. Some of these are definitely off the beaten path, way over here, and then we'll have to build some ladder systems to be able to get to them. Oh, even better, there's muckroot here. Let's go ahead and dig down through all of this and figure out what this is. Gonna need to put some tiles here because the sand's gonna collapse as soon as we dig it out. The fact that I just realized there was muckroot here when it's been staring at me in the face this whole time is comical or sad. I'm not sure which. And look at this. It's another friend. And this hatch is only 1 cycle old, which means we have plenty of time to keep feeding them dirt so they start laying sage hatch eggs. Unfortunately, we're going to need to get rid of this beautiful storage bin to put in our critter drop off, and that way we can grab all the hatches that we find. Now we're just waiting for 1 egg. We have found a few different Slicksters, but none of them so far have laid an egg. I think we'll dig over further, not that those dupes don't have enough to do, and see if there's any more Slicksters over here as well. Back on our home planet, we have this place completely vacuumed out. Hence the reason we haven't plugged our incubator in, because there's no atmosphere, so these things would get pretty hot pretty quick. Now, believe it or not, the difficult part is actually finding the hydrogen, which is normally not a big deal. I mean, there's a little bit up here, but it's not a lot, thanks to these plug slugs. We'll put in a temporary little pump system here, just to be able to grab that hydrogen. I'm going to have to take a look at how much we collect though, because I wanted to fill this room and then also put that layer of hydrogen in here. And that way these Drecos would also regrow their fur. We'll have to see. Still no egg over on Neutralina, but we have found 6 millwood seeds and more are coming because we're digging more. But the only reason we're even still here is because we found 4 cycles worth of muckroot. Otherwise, we were going to have to go home and get more food. All because 2 Slicksters are being lazy and don't want to make babies. We've only gotten 11.2 kilos from what little bit was here, but if we start feeding these plug slugs some ores, they should start producing more hydrogen. So I think that's exactly what we're gonna do. Don't get me wrong, I'm happy about 11 kilos. It'd be fine for just this room, but I also want 2 tiles thick of hydrogen here, and that's gonna take at least another 28 kilos. So we're gonna drop in one of these little automatic dispensers, and we're gonna feed the little plug slugs. With our little room set here, we'll just find some beautiful ores. Let's say some cobalt ore, and there's a little bit right now. If the theory is correct, that little baby should now bust out some hydrogen. And there it is. Absolutely beautiful. Now we put these 2 tiles in there to try to contain most of the hydrogen, but we knew we weren't going to be able to get all of it. And it looks like we already have 1 canister full, so we will throw it in this room right here. And we'll have to click the enable auto bottle so they know where they can get it from. Well, this I didn't exactly plan for. I didn't think we'd be here long enough to actually wear out Atmo suits. Now, the conditions are pretty bad in this planetoid, but there is still some oxygen. So I suppose we can still let them work in here until we can find that egg. Double checking the temperatures. The only place they really shouldn't be going is in here. So maybe we'll put a door right here and not allow any access through it. And then we'll go into our rocket and just say, let's disable the atmosphere checkpoint. This seems like a great idea. So unfortunately, the Slicksters got a little bit too cold and they have passed on. And of course, they couldn't lay an egg before they did that. I should have locked them in here as soon as I opened this spot up. That is my fault. Well, mine and Travis's. There's still a couple more Slicksters on this planetoid. The issue is it's a little warm down here without suits. So we're going to give it just a cycle or 2 more to see if this thing will lay any eggs. Because there's no carbon dioxide, they're not able to eat, which is making them miserable. Maybe if I just build a ladder and then run away, we won't die, and we'll drop some carbon dioxide in here, which will increase their happiness, which then possibly will make them lay an egg. Things in our home colony are doing much better. You can see we have this room full of hydrogen. We're getting the Dreklet eggs lullabied perfectly. The issue, though, is I alert every time they go in there, they're going to get the itchy eyes. They can't breathe. They're going to get wet. So I think we're actually going to put a couple of suits in here. Something like this. I would do just 1 suit, but there's too many chances for something to happen with just 1 suit. So we'll put the 2 in here, the Atmosuit checkpoint, and this will be perfect. We're actually going to go in through an alternate route because this would have actually just drowned the Slickster. All this water came rushing down. So we're going to go in through here. All this beautiful carbon dioxide will instantly sink down here, and hopefully this will be okay. Unfortunately, we are having some stress issues, and that's due to the way we are storing our oxygen in here. Every time the oxalite goes over a piece of polluted oxygen or carbon dioxide, it releases more oxygen. So right now there's 5.7 kilos per tile. Again, I didn't think we'd be here this long to have to deal with these contingencies. Otherwise, we would have put a much more robust oxygen system with carbon dioxide filtering and all that. But here we are, we might as well deal with it. Now, I did check on both duplicants. They're both just stress vomiters. That's not too big of a deal. The one I was worried about is if they were binge eaters. That's definitely not what we want. We're on the right side of the calorie count. We've got 4,000 calories on the inside and another 6,400 on the planetoid itself. Plus we have some great mealwood growing too. But I did need to make sure that one of them wasn't a binge eater, because then we would die. Because they would eat all the food and we wouldn't even have any to get back. As it is, they're just going to vomit everywhere. Not a big deal. Now it's time to play the waiting game. This Slickster needs to lay an egg. sooner rather than later. And John Archer has begun their stress vomiting. Really putting our Slickster in danger there, John. But at least he had enough decency to do it on the planetoid and not inside the rocket. I stand corrected. They decided they weren't exactly done stress vomiting. But notice what's happening. The oxalate in the storage bin keeps overwriting the polluted water. We're now up to 9 kilos worth of oxygen in here. Alright, the issue's probably a little bit more significant now. There's 32 kilos worth of oxygen inside this rocket. That's a lot of wasted oxalate. And it's all because they keep vomiting. And they keep vomiting because there's 33 kilos worth of oxygen in here. Make that 34. It's once again another self-licking ice cream cone. And we're up to 35. Desperate times call for desperate measures. In the absence of plastic to wrap one of these things up, we're going to use a trick. Notice I said the word trick. We're going to make sure it says auto wrangle surplus and then say 0 critters. And that way the dupes will believe, hey, this Slickster's extra, we need to move them. Now the issue is it's only 36 degrees in here. So we're going to need to move pretty quickly to keep that Slickster alive. Luckily for us, the Slickster can survive in 35 degree on the low side. And then back over here on our main planetoid, we've put one little critter drop off here for that Slickster to go nuts for a little while. Plenty of carbon dioxide, plenty of heat, and it'll keep the Slickster around until we're ready to propagate them. Now let me be clear, this is not an exploit. Clearly the dupes can get their little hands around the Slickster, so why couldn't they rope it up and deliver it? After all, the devs even put an animation for a roped up Slickster. So the story we're going with is duplicants would rather use the plastic traps on the Slicksters because they don't want to get their hands slimy. That's all it is. They don't want to get their hands slimy. You've heard it here first, folks. So they may have already fixed this bug. I mean, this duplicant preference, because I can't get them to scoop up this Slickster for anything. So instead, we're actually going to tame the Slickster. That way it lays eggs much faster. I mean, the Slickster has plenty to eat. It's got a perfectly nice stable. The only issue is the dupes are still trying to do this all without atmosuits. So their ability to make it all the way down here is limited by the fact that there's no breathable atmosphere. One way or another, we're gonna get this done. On the bonus, all the vomit is actually creating more oxygen because it's off-gassing from the polluted water. I mean, there's more than one way to oxygenate a cavern. Look at it. Do you see it? It's right there. This Slickster is 69 cycles old. This one's only 40 and it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to tame them. In fact, we're running precariously low on food because all this mealwood's been stifled because it's in chlorine now. Mealwood will grow in just about anything, but it doesn't like chlorine. So we're going to put some more planter boxes up here, transplant the mealwood, and hopefully that'll give us enough food for enough time to go grab this one larva egg. Now the key is going to be able to finding a spot that's not over 75 degrees so we can get to it. I think we're just going to try the most expeditious manner and hurry up. The good news is this crude oil and the polluted water have lowered the temps, so as it falls, it should lower the temps here too. Now I know this is a bit of MacGyvering, but at the end of the day, we're going to get a Slickster egg, right? Like, the ends justify the means. All right, we've made it through. Now all we have to do is grab this larva egg and then fly home. And at last, after way too many cycles with our duplicants being at risk, we have our larva egg. We only lost 1% on the viability and it's only 22% incubated, so we have plenty of time to be able to get it home. Now the last thing we're doing on this planetoid is putting in the mini pod. We're gonna have to put one of these on every single planetoid anyways as a part of our whole max colonization thing. But when we are ready to put a duplicant here, we might even be able to just print them out. All right, the two Johns I think have had enough. They're now out of calories. There's vomit all over the bottom of the rocket. The toilet's full. They did manage to get us 200 kilos worth of steel back and almost 9 tons of diamond. But let's get them home before they really have some issues. We will crew them up, get them both inside, and don't worry about the calories. We just happen to have just a little bit in here. And the hatches all drew straws, and this hatch at 81 cycles old lost. So they will be the food for the voyage home. Good job to the pair of Johns, and I'm sorry. Even though the rover just launched, because these two planetoids are so close, or rather their orbits are so close, it only takes a half a cycle to get home. And that's with the rocket moving at 1.9 tiles per cycle. It's pretty cool. Either way, I hate to see the next employee satisfaction surveys that the two Johns fill out. And our heroes have returned. And there it is. The beautiful larva egg that we spent way too many cycles and just about an entire episode trying to obtain. On the upside, we do have a perfect little stable for this hatch. The more it eats the dirt, the greater the chances it's going to come out as a sage hatchling. You might be wondering, well, if the standard hatch eats dirt and makes coal, what's the big difference? Well, when the standard hatch eats 140 kilos worth of dirt, it creates 70 kilos worth of coal. The sage hatch, on the other hand, eats the 140 kilos worth of dirt and it creates 140 kilos worth of coal. So as soon as we get our first sage hatching egg, we will go ahead and set this incubator to creating sage hatches. We have this storage bin collecting 2 kilos worth of dirt. And once we have a solid filter, we'll be able to have these auto sweepers pick it up and send the dirt directly over to this stable. But right now, we don't have access to those because solid filters are stuck behind data analysis research. Not a big deal. We'll just do it manually for now. Other than that, the auto sweeper is picking up all the critter eggs and dropping them off at our brand new evolution chamber. We still have to use the egg crackers for pips though, until we get that solid filter, and then we can send everything we need across one shipping line. For now, these rails are sending lumber. So soon we'll have some nice sage hatchlings who are going to give us a lot of coal that we can then use to keep creating ceramic, which then eventually gets transitioned over into sand. And the circle of life continues. Now this rocket is pretty unusable. It has 32 kilos worth of oxygen in each tile. Unfortunately, we wasted a lot of oxalite using that method. I just didn't think that we're going to be gone for so many cycles. So the best thing to do in times like these, let's just deconstruct it. And once we do, we get everything that was in that rocket to drop down on this platform. Unfortunately though, we do lose the oxygen. This is only the oxygen that was left over in the Atmo suits when they became worn out. As for our Drecos, well, they're doing great. We have our canister emptier here, and we're slowly dumping more and more hydrogen into this one top layer. We're also cleaning out all the polluted oxygen in here because it's interfering too much with the flow of hydrogen. The only thing we have to do is keep waiting for the plug slugs to keep eating the cobalt, and when they do, they create more hydrogen. And I even put a little bit of automation on this, and that way that gas pump's not running 100% of the time. But as we get more hydrogen, it'll be filtered in to this canister filler, and we'll dump more and more into here. Once that's done, we'll put the shearing station back here so even these Drecos can get sheared as well. The good news, here's our first glossy Dreclet egg, which means we're that much closer to getting plastic. In this episode, we got the Dreco Ranch going. It's going to provide us all that plastic and reed fiber, and even some phosphorite that we might be able to create some fertilizer with, and then create a farming station one day. We also went and found a beautiful hatchling that we're going to turn into a sage hatch for all of our coal needs. And then finally the coup de grace, the larva egg. That one Slickster is going to birth an entire Slickster colony right up here. And that Slickster colony is going to be fed with all this carbon dioxide, which is going to give us plenty of oil, which you know what that means. That's right, we've got a petroleum boil in our future. So I want to hear everything you have to say about this episode and the direction of this colony down in the comments below. I do read every single comment, so please don't hold back. Every comment actually helps the video, as does your like. Your support means everything. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you soon.